Do you put a lot of pressure on yourself to play perfectly during games? Do you find that this pressure helps you, or does this pressure hurt you? What I want to do is discuss how you can stop putting pressure on yourself if right now you feel that the pressure you are putting on yourself during games is causing you to underperform. There are two camps that you can fall into as an athlete when it comes to putting pressure on yourself. Camp one is you put pressure on yourself and this causes you to play better. Camp two is you put pressure on yourself and it causes you to play worse. So which camp do you fall into? Do you put pressure on yourself right now to play well and that pressure helps you? It elevates your performance? Or does pressure hold you back? I was talking with a parent yesterday about her son. He's a baseball player, and she was telling me how right now he is struggling to find his practice skills during games. He's playing well in practice, but he's not doing very well in games. He's struggling at the plate. The number one reason that she said she feels that this is happening is because of the pressure that he is putting on himself to play well. And this is something that's true for the majority of athletes that I work with. Most of the athletes I work with struggle to play well in games due to fear, anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt. But a lot of this stems from an underlying pressure that they are putting on themselves to play well. For the most part, this pressure is not coming from other people. I think the pressure that an athlete puts on themselves is so much stronger than the pressure that somebody else can put on them because it's them holding themselves to a certain standard. Now hold on to that idea of standard because we're going to come back to it later. When your standards are too focused on the outcome, that's where we see pressure hurt you. But what about this other camp where pressure helps you? Well, I've worked with many athletes who, when they put the pressure on themselves to do well, whether it's because somebody's watching, let's say a scout's watching them, or let's say that it's a really important game. When they put pressure on themselves, it leads to them playing better because they say, okay, today I have to do well, so I will double down, I will give more effort, I will play my best today. So the pressure actually helps them. Now, it doesn't really matter what camp you fall into because I've seen athletes have success who have struggled with putting pressure on themselves because they put pressure on themselves and then it causes them to underperform. And I've also seen athletes, like I said, who have incredible amounts of success when they put pressure on themselves. What's important is understanding which camp you fall into. Because right now, if you put pressure on yourself and it increases your performance, you want to use that, right? You want to double down. You want to always put that pressure on yourself and you want to say, today I need to play well. And that's where you will find more consistently good performances. But if you struggle with putting this pressure on yourself, then we need to change the way you look at this pressure and change the type of pressure you are putting on yourself. And so that brings me to the strategy that you can use to help if you are putting too much pressure on yourself and how you can stop putting this pressure on yourself. So I want you to think about why you put pressure on yourself. What is the number one reason why you are putting this pressure on yourself to play well? Well, it probably has to do with those last two words that I said, play well. You put pressure on yourself because you want to go out there and you want to perform at a certain level. You want to do your best, right? But is putting pressure on yourself helping you do your best? Or is putting pressure on yourself causing you to be afraid of not doing your best? Be worried about what will happen if you perform poorly? That's where we will see this pressure hurt you. When you put pressure on yourself to play well, but then that idea of playing well leads to stress and fear of not playing well. And then you end up playing timidly, you hold yourself back, you play too tense, you try to force certain outcomes, you're not just flowing and you're not playing smoothly. Now, when we know that that's present, right, we know that that stress and that anxiety is present, well, then we have to look at where this pressure is focused. So think back to what I just said about playing well. How do you know if you play well? Well, playing well will be based on the outcome. It'll be based on the stat line, how many hits you got, how many games you won, right, how many points you had, how many tackles you got. That's what it will mean to play well. And that's true, right? I mean, that's what everybody looks at after the game to say, okay, who played a good game? But going into the game and being the one who is actually in the middle of the game, when this pressure hurts you, you cannot allow yourself to start thinking about all those different outcomes. So what should you think about? Well, what you should think about is what athletes who put pressure on themselves and find it as an asset think about and what they focus on. So I want to tell you an example or give you an example of this athlete that I'm working with currently. Now, she is probably one of the best examples of an athlete who puts pressure on herself and then finds that pressure to be incredibly valuable. Whenever she feels that a game is important, she doubles down and she gives more effort and she pretty much plays really well every single time she feels that a game is important. And so what she and I are actually working on is how to get that level of intensity and pressure to put on herself on a consistent basis because her play will increase. But for her, when she puts pressure on herself, because it's important, because there's a scout watching, or because it's a big game, she does not then worry about playing badly. There's no room for that worry in her mind. All she focuses on is playing hard and doing her best. So she ends up giving more effort. She ends up trying to take more shots. She ends up being more aggressive, right? And she also ends up being more disciplined with herself when it comes to moving on from frustration and mistakes, because she knows that she has to play well. So do you see how she did not get stuck, or she does not get stuck in the outcome, right? She doesn't think too much about how she needs to play. She doesn't think about the stats a whole lot. She knows she needs to play her best. So then she turns her attention onto these aspects of her game, right? The controllable parts of her game that will lead to her playing her best. And one of the things I think is the most interesting from what she and I have talked about is how when she puts pressure on herself, she has herself on a shorter leash in terms of frustrations, right? In terms of allowing her mind to get negative. She puts her foot down and she says, nope, I cannot get negative today because I know it's an important game, right? Because I need to play well. So that starts to highlight what this strategy will be for you if you do currently put so much pressure on yourself. When you put this pressure on yourself, I don't think it's safe for us to say, don't put pressure on yourself, because we need to understand that this pressure is coming from an internal desire to play your best, and I don't want you to let that go. You need to hold on to that. But you have to then take it a step farther, right? You have to ask yourself, well, what do I need to do in order to play my best? Because if I get stuck thinking about these outcomes, I know that will only lead to pressure that causes stress, anxiety, and worry for me, which I know only holds me back. But instead, when I use this pressure to turn my attention onto the small, controllable aspects of my game that actually help me play my best, then I will see my performance increase. So what you can do for this is you can ask yourself the very simple question of, what do I need to focus on and what do I need to do in order to play my best? Make yourself a list, right? You can list out all these different aspects. Now, make sure that they are 100% controllable. You do not want to be focused on putting pressure on yourself based on things outside of your control. That is a recipe for failure, for feeling like you're not playing well, which then inevitably leads to you getting too frustrated at yourself. So identify what are the parts of your game that you need to do really well that are controllable that will help you play your best. For the athlete that I was giving in the example, she focuses on giving full effort. She focuses on taking more shots. And like I said, she focuses on moving on quickly and having positive thoughts. Put pressure on yourself to stick to the controllables, right? I like to call these standards that you have for yourself as an athlete. What are the standards that you want to set for yourself? How do you want to play? Not in terms of outcomes, but in terms of effort, in terms of controllable parts of your game. That's where pressure needs to be focused. And when pressure is focused on controllable parts of your game, your play will increase. So in summary, when you're putting so much pressure on yourself to play well, this will hold you back when you get stuck thinking about what will happen if you don't play well. And then this leads to tension and you try to force a good performance. But pressure can be an incredible asset to you if it causes you to focus more on the controllable parts of your game. So get a clear idea of what are the controllable parts of your game that you need to focus on in order to play well, and put pressure on yourself to stick to those. If you have any questions about this video or would like me to cover any other sports psychology topic, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.